Give me a glimmer of hope again. Save me from all my wandering. If I've been looking in all the wrong places, would you turn me back around again?
Welcome to HopeCasts, where our true stories brighten your day by providing insight and encouragement. I invite you to listen as my husband, Dr. Ken Brown, shares one of his amazing personal experiences that will inspire and stir your soul. Even in the challenges of life's darkest moments, you can always find a glimmer of hope through the love of God. So settle in, open your heart, and let's journey together through the power of storytelling.
The domino effect. One of the hardest things that I've ever done was become a police officer while being a Christian. Canada is an unusual environment because there are so few born-again Christians that confess Jesus, and especially it was hard ground working as a police officer. It was difficult when I got hired. They didn't want to hire me because I was a minister and a missionary. And when I got on the job after receiving my training, I went through 11 training officers because no one wanted to work with me. Now, they said that they didn't like the fact that I brought my Bible into the guard room and I would read my Bible. And they said that my whole life was a list of do's and don'ts. And they didn't respect me because they didn't know and understand who I was. They judged my book by my cover, namely the Bible that I carried in my front left pocket. And so then they started to call me all names, pejorative names that were very insulting, like Bible thumper, or Father Brown, or the Rev. Who do you think you are? And I was just trying to be a cop for Christ. 11 training officers. It was so difficult. I mean, my year of previous training in the police academy and getting the highest grades, and I just was wanting to serve so desperately. But when I was on probation, they just did not accept me. Of course, I was brand new. I had squeaky shoes, but they just didn't really give me a chance. And so one after another, they would work with me for a couple days, a couple weeks, and all of a sudden they stopped. They said, I don't want to work with them anymore. And the excuse was that I wouldn't lie. The fact is that I was sharing my faith with them, and they thought that I was proselytizing, even though I was just living my life as a Christian. That year was torture. But finally I was committed and completed, and I finished my probation, and there I was, a police officer, off probation, able to work by myself. That very next year, I met this tall, solidly built man with an English accent. This Bobby, this sergeant, came from England, and he got hired in our police department. He was formerly a sergeant. His name was Peter Howarth, and he was a kind of a very gentle man, but very, very wise. And he had 25 years already under his belt. He was experienced. And so sometimes we worked together, and I assure you that I learned more from him than all of my other training officers combined. He taught me how to assess a crime scene. He taught me how to see beyond what you're actually seeing. And I wished that I had been able to work with him for that year, because I knew I would be so much farther ahead. And so I valued and cherished the time that we worked together. And now, about 3 years later, we were friends. And my colleagues realized by this time that I actually was a good cop who was not going to get other people in trouble. I wasn't trying to make problems for anybody, and I wasn't certainly Bible thumping them. They knew that I was going to back them up. And I was doing the job, and I was doing it well. And in fact, if you want to have a good witness, you have to do the job well, because that's the only thing that will win them over. But I'd become station humor by this time. Now I was the Rev, or hi, Father Brown, or they would say it with a teasing affection. Well, we all had nicknames at that time. It was sort of like living inside a cartoon. And all of us became cartoon characters with our own names. So it was not offensive to me, and they didn't seem to be bothered at all. In fact, many times when there was a crisis, when they were having personal problems. They would seek me out and ask me to pray for them. Now, police work is very, very busy. In Toronto, we rarely ever got a lunch break, which, by the way, can happen at any time of the day. Don't let the name lunch break confuse you, because it was never at lunchtime. So one lunch break we had, which was at 3 a.m., yawn, we actually got to go back to the police station for a whole hour to eat. Of course, what was there open? Donut shops? There wasn't much to eat at 3 a.m. But what happened was all these officers were there sitting around a large table, and they were playing bones. Bones were a type of domino, where they would be shuffling all these dominoes, and they would be all hyped up in coffee, playing, they called it bones, playing bones, and they were all rambunctious and noisy, and they were all men with lots of testosterone. They were shouting, and they were betting on who was going to win. I actually had a flashback looking at them, thinking of those soldiers casting the lots at the foot of the cross. When I was in Israel a couple of years ago, there I saw on the marble floor, there was still the carvings of the boxes for the religious games where the Roman legions were hosted and where they lived on the floor. It's still there after 2,000 years. And at that time, this Sergeant Peter Howarth, saw me. And he said, "Hi, Rev, do me a favor. Pray for me, because if I win this hand, I'm going to win $100. And then he laughed, which caused everyone else at the table to laugh in a semi-affectionate, mocking way. So I asked him, "Well, Peter, if I pray for you, what's going to be God's cut?" He said, "What, 10%? Is that enough?" I said, "Oh, no, 10% is not enough for God." 20%? No, nowhere near enough. 50%? Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll donate 50% of the take if you pray for me and if I win this hand. I said, "Not enough." He said, "Well, what does God want? What could he possibly want more than 50%? I said, "Peter, he wants all of you. He wants all of your heart, and he wants all of your life." And with this, everybody stopped talking. They stopped laughing. It was like I poured cold water in the room, and everybody just looked at me, their mouths open. And then Peter didn't know what to say. And finally, he slammed his fist down on the table, and he says, "God's price is too much. I'm not willing to pay that." And I said, "Well, I want you to know I've already been praying for you, Peter." He says, "Well, thanks, I guess." And he went back to his game, and he won. And everybody was saying, "Whoa, you won!" And anyways, I never asked him for a cent. I don't know what he did with the winnings. But all I know is this, is that he kept on meeting with me after that. And every time he called me Father Brown, but in an English accent. And he seemed to really warm up to me. And we'd have many a coffee in me in my police car, him in his police car, on a quiet evening when there was break between the cars. And we would talk, and I would tell him about how I became a Christian and the things of God. And he seemed to be genuinely interested. Well, 8 years later, I left the job, and I bumped into this man. And to my surprise, it was Sergeant Peter Howarth. And do you know what? He had finally retired for the second time from the Metropolitan Toronto Police Force. And now he was a Christian. And now he had gone to Bible school. And now he was the pastor of a local church. And he was giving wisdom and information to people. And I just knew his congregation was being blessed with that same wit and wisdom that he had exhibited to me. Only this time, it was directed from the Lord. And I was thinking, I prayed for him. And that game of bones, those dominoes, when they fell and he ended up winning, I wonder if God was actually making a covenant with him. And he did give his entire life to Jesus. And now we were brothers two ways. Not just brothers in law, but brothers in the Lord. We became brothers and friends. And I saw the transformation God had done in my beloved brother, Peter Howarth. And he truly was being used by the Lord in a spectacular way, because that's the way the dominoes fell that day. May God bless you. And I just pray that God works in your life. And remember, God doesn't want 10% of your life. He wants 100% of you.
Thank you for tuning into HopeCasts for inspiring stories that will touch your heart. If today's story encouraged you, then please subscribe to our channel and visit us at hopecasts.org to learn more. You can also watch the video version of this story and many more from Dr. Brown on our HopeCasts, YouTube, or listen on our Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Music podcasts. Until next time, keep holding on to hope, and please share these stories with someone who really needs encouragement. May God bless you.
I've been searching and I've been seeking. It seems like you're nowhere to be found. And I'd do anything just to see you. If I close my eyes, will I see you now? 'Cause I know faith hopes in what can't be seen. But my hope feels like a distant dream. Give me a glimmer of hope again. Save me from all my wandering. If I've been looking in all the wrong places, would you turn me back around?